This is Radio Taiwan International.
Welcome to the news on Radio Taiwan International. I'm Phil Laskowski coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan. We begin with a look at today's top stories for Thursday, July 10th. Foreign Ministry welcomes cooperation with NATO. Taiwan's new tanks fire first live rounds in public debut. And Taiwan absent from US tariff list as trade talks continue. But first, today's top story. In a recent joint press conference with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte warned China of its continued military expansion and strengthening deployment to invade Taiwan. The Foreign Ministry responded on Thursday, saying that in the face of authoritarianism, Taiwan will continue to cooperate with like-minded partners such as the G7 and NATO to jointly defend peace, stability, and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific and the Taiwan Strait. Rutte also mentioned that the security of the transatlantic and Indo-Pacific regions is increasingly intertwined and facing potential threats from China and Russia. He said that NATO can only effectively deter possible military risk-taking by strengthening its overall military strength and deepening cooperation with allies in the area. The Foreign Ministry expressed that since taking office in 2024, Rutte has repeatedly pointed out China's expansionist nature and actions and its aggressive ambitions against Taiwan, and actively called on all sectors to face up to challenges and risks posed by China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran to the global peace and security order. The ministry reiterated its stance that Taiwan welcomes cooperation with NATO and like-minded countries to promote prosperity and stability in the region. Taiwan's newly acquired M1A2T Abrams tanks, part of 108 purchased from the United States, carried out their first live-fire drills this Thursday, with President Lai Ching-te calling them the most advanced weapon systems in the world and a key asset in Taiwan's later deterrent strategy. For this drill, 120mm smoothbore tank guns fired 19 rounds, live-streamed to the Defense Ministry's social media accounts. Each tank is powered by a 1,500 horsepower gas turbine engine capable of operating across rugged terrain. The tanks carry 42 rounds of ammunition and double the performance of Taiwan's older tank models. Brigade Commander Zhou Guangyi commented that the new fire control system allows commanders to identify and designate targets using independent thermal imaging, significantly improving engagement capability. The tanks are expected to be fully integrated into the military by the end of this year. Lai said the drill is a part of the annual Hankwang exercise, this year focusing on real-world readiness. He reaffirmed the government's commitment to supporting the armed forces, stating the more training will lead to national and regional security. Taiwan has notably been excluded from the first two waves of United States President Donald Trump's tariff announcements, which list new reciprocal tariff rates for 22 countries, including Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Brazil. This absence has raised questions about Taiwan-US trade relations and the current state of negotiations. This Thursday, Cabinet spokesperson Michelle Lee provided an update on the latest developments. Lee confirmed that Taiwan-US negotiations on reciprocal tariffs are ongoing, with a delegation led by Vice President Cheng Li-jun and Trade Negotiation Representative Yang Zhenyi conducting in-person meetings with U.S. counterparts in Washington since July 8th. The teams are working toward consensus on tariff issues, with both sides affirming progress and planning the next round of talks. Meanwhile, the new tariff rates are significant, with Southeast Asian countries facing minimum rates of 25%. Malaysia will face 25% tariffs, Indonesia 32%, Thailand and Cambodia 36%, while Laos and Myanmar face the highest rates at 40%. Besides reciprocal tariffs, Trump has threatened additional tariffs on semiconductors, copper, and pharmaceuticals, with investigations into semiconductor and pharmaceutical tariffs expected to conclude by the end of this month. Spokesperson Lee emphasized that Taiwan-US relations are based on strengthening economic ties and mutual benefit principles, aiming for a trade balance. Lee says,
Well, actually, between Taiwan and the US, we have always adhered to deepening bilateral economic and trade relations, and we also uphold the principle of mutual benefit and reciprocity, hoping to achieve trade balance. In this regard, both sides are actively engaged in consultation and communication. As I just mentioned, we are currently arranging the timing for the next round of in-person negotiations, so we have always maintained an optimistic outlook.
Lee noted that negotiations details remain confidential due to diplomatic protocol, but that the government will announce industry impacts and policy measures when appropriate. Taiwan has not received formal tariff notifications from the US and continues to monitor developments to protect industrial interests and economic stability. China's dominance in the rare earth elements gives it a major edge in global trade, but the costs to health and the environment are hard to ignore.
In Baotou, Inner Mongolia, known as the rare earth capital of the world, a vast toxic lake stretches across 11 square kilometers. It's filled with sludge from decades of processing rare earth elements. In the dry season, winds carry dust laced with lead, cadmium and thorium. In the rainy season, radioactive wastewater seeps into the ground. Rare earths are essential to modern technologies, for high-tech industry, military equipment and electric vehicles. China's dominance in rare earths has given it major leverage in global trade, especially with Europe and the US. However, a recent New York Times report has revealed the massive costs to public health and the environment associated with rare earth mineral mining. Built in the 1950s, the site in Baotou violates international environmental standards. Studies have linked the pollution to developmental delays in children, and dangerously high levels of rare earths have been found in their urine. The surrounding area is no longer grazable for cattle, and many livestock deaths have been reported. Despite growing concerns over the impacts, coverage of the topic is tightly controlled in China. It's almost impossible to find reports on the internet. Foreign journalists investigating the issue have faced interference, and the site has been labelled a trade secret. Although Beijing has launched anti-corruption efforts and crackdowns on illegal mining in a bid to clean up the industry, change is likely to take years. Former US Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell says it could take a generation to reduce worldwide dependence on China's rare earths, raising serious questions about the place of China's rare earths in geopolitics and the long-term sustainability of the country's resource-led development. Amber Hatfield for RTI News.
A recent domestic homicide case in Tucheng, New Taipei City, is raising questions about the efficacy of protective orders and how domestic violence is regarded and handled by the justice system. Just before the homicide, the 46-year-old male suspect in the case had just been transferred to the New Taipei District Prosecutor's Office for violating a protective order filed by his wife. However, prosecutors determined the circumstances were minor following his interrogation, releasing him without bail, which led to the killing of both his wife and sister-in-law. National Zhenan University Center for Domestic Violence and Child Abuse Research Chief Director Wang Peiling underscores that although research shows protective orders have a deterrent effect in roughly 80% of cases, 20% of perpetrators ignore protection orders. She says that additional measures may be needed to protect against individuals with criminal records, mental or personality disorders, and those with a strong desire for control. Wang points out domestic violence cases may escalate to a critical point when there's an imbalance of power caused by the act of seeking legal protection. To protect those who are seeking help from the judicial system, she says,
"We make safety plans for those who fear retaliation, stalking, and continued threats of harm. We will let the victim leave first after the court hearing, for example, sometimes with a police escort for more serious cases."
Modern Women's Foundation Director Wang Ruxuan, who is one of the main promoters of the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, highlights the high risks hidden in domestic violence cases. She points out that the domestic violence is the use of violence against family members, while the violation of a protective order is a blatant challenge to national laws. Therefore, relevant units should be more vigilant when facing cases of violation of protective orders, as they are often high risk. Both directors call on the judicial system to address the dangers of perpetrators who violate protective orders and to issue more serious restraining orders as appropriate to increase deterrence. At the same time, they also suggest improving domestic violence case network system safety plans to reduce the chance of escalation. If you or anyone you know is experienced in domestic violence in Taiwan, please dial 113 for police assistance or call 0223917133 for the Modern Women's Foundation. Thanks for joining me for the news. I'm Phil Laskowski. Stay tuned for another 50 minutes of English language features brought to you by Radio Taiwan International.